What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla Minus One news and updates. That's right, in this video we are going to be finishing off our coverage of week 1 and 2 of Godzilla Minus One, so welcome to the big one. Oh guys, oh no. I've had a lot of my concerns a little vindicated about this movie recently. I watched a Monstrosities live stream and he talked a little bit about Minus One and made me a little nervous. I'm not familiar with director Takashi Yamazaki's work, but Matt talked about how my concerns are pretty valid in that he is a very nationalistic director, which there's nothing wrong with. You run into issues when you become nationalist about a government who was in the wrong. To put it lightly. I'm very curious. I'm going in with an open mind. I'm going to stay open and positive, but it was almost put very succinctly in that stream, and I'll refine what Matt was saying to what I feel about the film, in that the reason that I feel that the 1954 Godzilla movie is such a powerful and prominent film, and the reason that I think it has so much staying power, and the reason that it's considered one of the greatest movies to come from Japan, is not because it is a very political film. It is because it's a very nuanced political film. The 1954 Godzilla movie viewed Godzilla and nuclear weapons as a human issue. Honda was all about mankind. It seems Yamazaki views it more as a Japanese issue, not a human issue, but a Japan issue, and to a certain degree, an America issue. So I'm very curious to see how things are handled in this new film. That is what we'll start with, I guess, on a down note. But that's okay, let's raise it back up. Let's talk about some art really quickly. We've got a lot of cute art today. For some reason, the theme of today's video is really cute art. Starting out with Yutsuchi-san's Chibi Yamazaki Goji history art. This shows all of Yamazaki's Godzilla designs from Always Sunset to Godzilla the Ride to Godzilla Minus One. Very cute, adorable stuff. It works in some good details. The GMK-esque eyes, the overly large dorsal spines, and I like the little eye scar on the new Godzilla. That's a good touch. The next one comes to us from Quasi's art, which is Godzilla holding up the train. This one's very cute as well. Almost indistinguishable from the 1954 Godzilla holding up his train, which excites me. I like the fact that we're going back to that in the new movie. That's a great reference to pull from. Finally, we've got Makio 0001's Godzilla Minus One. This is very similar to the pose he's in the poster. I love it. I like seeing the clock tower in the background. That's another little great detail that Mikio added. I love Mikio's art. I think it's always very cute, but he somehow finds a way to strike a perfect balance between chibi goodness and also really rich detail, and I think this looks wonderful. This is a really great one. My Kaiju did a Godzilla Minus One poster recreation. I believe this was recreated with the Godzilla the Ride Godzilla. However, it might have also been recreated from one of the like Bandai Godzillas or something coming out for this new film. This would be an awesome poster for the movie. I like that font. I like that Shin Godzilla-esque Minus One font. Cool inclusion of the logo up at the top too. I mean, I know I'm just admiring things that are like Toho assets that he's using, but this is a really well done poster. I think this is great. And I like, again, hiding that little clock tower in this picture as well. I don't know where this comes from, but I found a recreation of the Godzilla Minus One G symbol. Oh, this guy, this symbol. I found a recreation of that using Godzilla's body in a very similar design to what we're seeing in this new movie, and it looks great. Now you can really see the way that they've hidden the Godzilla silhouette in this G design, and this is wonderful. This is really, really fun. I think this is awesome. Whoever made this art, great job. I would love to know who did it, so if you guys know the source, please link it down below. I was not able to find it through a reverse image search. I'm only gonna say this name once. Good Guy 73405236 placed the Godzilla 1954 inside of the G for this new movie, just kind of playing upon that same idea that it's made from the silhouette of Godzilla, also seeming to hide Godzilla's eye in the Minus One. That is strange. What I really wanted to talk about was that he recreated the diet attack from the original 1954 Godzilla, although he replaced it with the new Godzilla, and it looks wonderful. I would love to see a sequence like this in the new movie. That looks awesome. I'm really into this image. I just think it's so fun. I think it's got a great vintage vibe, and it gives me a lot of hope that we could see some incredible stuff in this new movie. He also then added in the other Yamazaki Godzillas, Godzilla the Ride and Godzilla from Always Sunset. These are great. I really like this picture. Just a a lot of fun showing all three together, although it's not in scale. I'll just say that because I know some Godzilla fans are particular about that, so I'll just throw that out there. Pulmag created this documentary-like reveal for Godzilla Minus One. This is a great animation. It's kind of playing upon like this found footage-esque vibe. I'm really into it. Just driving down the street in this mostly destroyed version of Tokyo and the train gets dropped in. Maybe it's not Tokyo, but the train gets dropped in, then we pan up to reveal Godzilla. It's a fantastic sequence, and I would love to see something like that in this new movie. That wasn't the only incredible fan animation made, as Canon's Godzilla Minus One MMD features his recreation of the Minus One Godzilla design standing up and doing a big roar, and it's just got great shots. I really like the scale of it. I like that zoom out there at the end when Godzilla's doing his big growl. It's a lot of fun. Great animation and really quick work on that Godzilla design. This is great. MindQ made a video where they tried to estimate Godzilla's height in the new Minus One film. I want to talk about it because I thought it was a very well made video, and I thought they used some pretty compelling arguments to try and guesstimate what Godzilla's height will be. Their early estimates place Godzilla at around 200 feet or 60 meters, so about a millennium era height for Godzilla, taking him almost back to where we started with the show of 50 meters. I personally wanted him to be at his 50-meter height, but I would be just as happy with the 60-meter height. I just don't want him to be 100 plus meters like he has mostly been since the 90s. But it's a great video. You can go check it out down below. The new Enshiered Monster Godzilla Toho Monster Series Banpresto Godzilla Minus One Chibi version was revealed. As of now, I'm not yet sure how tall it is or how much it'll cost, but I'd guess it'll probably stand at around 4 to 6 inches. I think it's got a great design overall. One thing it does a really good job of highlighting is Godzilla's incredible new eyes, and I just keep mentioning it, that chest scar I think is great. It reminds me a lot of the scar on Godzilla 2003's chest, the one that he picked up in the 2002 film, Godzilla X Mechagodzilla. One thing I don't like about it is the way that you can very clearly see that the back is added on to the front piece. They're two separate pieces, and you got that nice ridge line running through him where the plastic piece is put together. But one thing I'll praise is that tail. I like the tail wrap. Always praise tail wraps like that. I'm a big fan of those, so I wanted to give that a shout out. And he looks great from in front and from behind. It's just really kind of the side profiles that he doesn't hold up as well under. The World of Mr. Yamazaki is a new exhibit being put on to show how director Takashi Yamazaki's films were made. Yamazaki is obviously a huge fan of special effects films. If you want to hear more about Yamazaki's career and how we led to this museum being put together, go check out my last video where we go over an overview of his career. But some sketches were released showing what the planned exhibition hall was going to be, and in it you can see there is a Godzilla statue, as well as a miniature version of some cities, a battleship, some creatures, it looks like a big whale maybe, and then the tricycle car that I'm assuming is from Always Sunset. These sketches show off what we can expect from the exhibit. The exhibit was launched and Godzilla Minus One merchandise was on sale at it. This is the same merchandise that was revealed before. There's these like hollow pinups of Godzilla, these kind of plastic magnets basically of Godzilla Minus One. They are on sale, just showing off the design and the render overall. And somehow, some way, Nagano Avenue already has a Godzilla Minus One tribute already up. This has a lot of Godzilla the Ride stuff, like that incredible Godzilla the Ride figure, as well as a Ghidorah and Godzilla fighting over some Japanese temple. I can't tell which one that is, but he's already added the new Godzilla holo displays to it. I mean, I believe this is his private collection. This very well could be on display, considering there is some other Yamazaki work here and some stuff hanging down, but there's also like a 2014 Godzilla here, so I think this is his personal house display. Looks great. The World of Director Takashi Yamazaki Museum exhibit opened up at the Matsumoto City Museum of Art, and it features the Godzilla 2023 statue. These pictures come to us from Tokusatsu DNA. I've got a bunch of different pictures from a bunch of different people linked down below, so please go check out all of the links down below to find the original people who found this stuff. People like 1/104th photographer, or Tanima, or Gojira 2. This of course is the statue I talked about in my previous video, so I'll keep my thoughts brief. I just think he looks incredible. Again, he strikes such an impressive pose. I think the size of it is great. Seeing it here in this museum is a lot of fun. We have some great pictures of it showing it up close. We've got a lot of really great details showing some side images of him from many different angles, but some of the more interesting ones are the ones showing off the spines. Again, I really like the way that the spines are like multi-layered and really thick in this movie, and it also shows off the really spiky, unnatural, upsetting back of this Godzilla and the way he's all bumpy and uncomfortable and wrinkled. Also, one of these close-ups of the spines is really interesting. As you can see, one of the spines is like fully protruded out of his back, almost like it's gonna fall off. There's just a lot of very interesting design details going on with this Godzilla, and I'm very excited to see him in the new film. Again, I think this is one of the most exciting Godzilla designs we've gotten because it takes the classic and makes it newer and scarier in a way that doesn't redesign the wheel. We have some really up-close pictures of the new Godzilla's head. These were brought to us by Gojira 2, and he has has his own interpretation of the new Godzilla design. First of all, he calls it the Mai Goji, and he says that it represents the terror of an angry god, a beast with merciless power and overwhelmingly ghastly features. That's just such a great description. He also notices that this is a, as he calls it, royal Godzilla with spines on his head like a crown. That is wonderful. I've pointed that out in my other videos, but it's great. It's such a cool touch that some of his spines stick up to the point where they can like go over his head, but in this case, he's particularly referring to the fact that Godzilla's back spines actually continue all the way up through his neck and onto his head, much like we saw in some of the older Godzillas. This is not the first Godzilla to have this, but it is very cool to see that it goes almost all the way to the bridge of his nose. That's how I always liked it. I always thought that was neat. That's not the only bit of Godzilla memorabilia on display here, as the tricycle car from Always is on display as well. Now, of course, that's not a Godzilla car, but it was in Yamazaki's film featured alongside Godzilla. There's a couple photos of that tricycle car. It's just such a unique and interesting design. It has always stuck with me since I saw it back in the day as a kid, as I thought that was part of the upcoming Godzilla 2012 film that didn't exist. This is not the only Godzilla display at this exhibit either. The world of Yamazaki also features his GMK-inspired Always design as a model. Now, we have seen this thing before. I've talked about it in previous videos. This is actually pretty old news seeing this guy, but I like the sculpt, I like the pose. It's not my favorite Godzilla design by any means. I think his face is very ugly. I think his spines are very ugly. Seeing this thing up close and personal makes me really glad that this wasn't featured in the new film, as it just doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't look like Godzilla as much as it looks like Grandpa Godzilla. Look at the way he's missing some teeth. Now, maybe that's just because this is an old sculpture from back in the day and it's damaged and weathered over time. That is entirely possible, but even in the film, it's not my favorite Godzilla design either. And if you thought that was all, you are sure wrong. There is a Godzilla -1 on display there as well. Now, this is a much smaller Godzilla sculpt. Actually, at first, I thought it was the original statue that we've been talking about, but it is in a different pose, I think ever so slightly, and it is way smaller. This one fits on a table and you can hold it in your hands. This was on display in order to show off the skin texture of the new Godzilla. I've got a ton of stuff about this linked down below that you can go check out, but I think he looks absolutely wonderful. There's just, again, there's so many great details. I think he looks very scary and menacing in his face in particular, especially when the shadows cross his eyes just right. The legs are a little chunkier than I'd love, but I do really like the feet. I think the feet look fantastic, and so if the legs need to be chunkier to support those big feet, then sure. Again, I like the discoloration on the chest, as I mentioned many times, and I really like that scar tissue under the eye that almost looks like a teardrop coming down from his face. This does do a wonderful job showing off the skin texture of Godzilla, and some of the stuff I really like is like the shoulder blades and the way that it has multiple different scale patterns meshing into each other. These side views, though, highlight one of the things that I think is going to become a major issue for Godzilla fans as they get wind of this. I don't know how many people are aware of this just yet, but in addition to having that one dorsal spine stick so far out again that it looks like it's going to protrude and fall off, you can see that in this model as well, so it's not an issue with the giant sculpt, it's an actual feature of the new design. We can see Godzilla is another thick, chunky boy, much like Shin Godzilla was, much like the 2014 Godzilla was. I mean, just look at this incredibly fat thigh, and not only that, look how chunky the base of his tail gets when it meets his body. This guy has a fat ass. This is the fattest ass any Godzilla has ever had. It's like they saw Kong from GVK and wanted to compete with it. This is crazy. But then we get back up top and he looks great. He looks really wonderful up top. And from certain angles, he looks like, truthfully, one of the greatest Godzilla designs we've ever gotten. I think it just might be that one very unflattering low angle of him that makes him look quite overweight, we'll say. Tanima posted a full breakdown of the Godzilla display at the Yamazaki Museum, stating that it is a 50cm model. The note says it's there to show off texture, and there's also a Godzilla -1 graphic showing off storyboards, which we'll talk about in a little bit. He did notice the really thick legs and tail increasing at the base, and he thinks it's there to create a gigantic feeling. He says in his opinion the right side looks better than the left, and I completely agree. We'll get to those storyboards in just a second, but first, a new Godzilla -1 plot synopsis was revealed. This plot summary states, Japan, devastated after the war, faces a new threat in the form of Godzilla. How will the country confront this impossible situation? Very Shin Godzilla description right there, which is fine. Nothing new there. I'm very excited about it. Tokyo Toy Bastard reported on the extras being cast in the new Godzilla film. This was in response to me wondering if the American military would have a presence in this new movie. This goes back to the stuff we talked about at the beginning of the video with the whole nationalist attitude. Now, according to his extras report, and take it with a grain of salt because I have no way of confirming if he's a valid source or not, but I'm gonna put a little bit of trust in him. Tokyo Bastard claims to have been around extras cast in the film and states that they were playing Japanese military members. Toho was turning down foreign extras. So he doubts that the US will have much presence in this film, aside from potentially aerial combat, and he speculates that the occupying forces could even be wiped out early in the movie. For those of you who don't know, Japan would be under US occupation at this point, with the US military basically taking over all defense of Japan at this time. As I understand it, Japan did not have a military at this point. They were stripped of their military. Not an expert, going off my history classes here. And then the JSDF wasn't founded until 1954. So at this point, Japan would be defenseless in the face of a Godzilla, and so the US really should be having a part in defending them. But it sounds like they might not do that because it may or may not align with the ideals of this new movie. We'll end it here with the reveal of these storyboards. They are very interesting. Tanima reveals the featured concept art and storyboards at the Godzilla -1 display, and if you look closely here, you can see Godzilla with his back turned, showing massive spines and exaggerated proportions. The storyboards on the side show Godzilla chasing after a boat. There's a man in a hazmat suit on the boat, maybe a Serizawa of some sort. Godzilla rears up out of the water, his eyes locked on his target. Maybe if this film is following a 54-esque structure, this is the end of the film, or it could be the beginning of the film. Who knows? I don't know where the hazmat suit comes in, but Godzilla rears up out of the water, his eyes locked on his target. He roars and continues. He looks horrifying and distorted in this art, and I think this is going to be a very scary and intense sequence. Finally, it seems he catches the boat, opens his mouth, and potentially chomps on it? A man in glasses gets terrified, and then it seems Godzilla either bites into the boat or smashes it with his arm, but either way, it appears he wrecks the thing. I do think that's going to be a sequence we're going to see play out in this new movie. If that is the case, it looks like a very dynamic shark attack-esque sequence. That would be fantastic stuff. Very Godzilla versus Kong, I suppose. But I think that sounds wonderful. I'm very into that idea. You don't really storyboard a whole sequence and then not use it in your movie. I mean, that happens all the time, but it would feel strange for them to go, well, we storyboarded the sequence and we're going to put it on display, but it means nothing. We also see a 3D rendering of Godzilla's head that looks very different from the Godzilla we have already seen. This Godzilla has crazier teeth and a different set of spines on his head. The neck patterning is all different, and the mouth is much more Shin Godzilla based. Now, I know a lot of people are expecting two Godzillas to be in this movie, and maybe this is our first look at a second Godzilla, but I don't think so. I think this is just there to reference what Godzilla's design could potentially look like. Like, this is just a developmental stage. This is where they were at some point in the past before they landed on their final design. I, of course, think this because we see multiple Godzilla concept arts on this wall that don't look like the Godzilla in the movie. And then if you read the little plaques under them, it's stating like developmental design or like design process ideas. So I just think it was concept art. I don't think it's a second Godzilla that's being revealed here. I mean, who knows? Maybe even this is the Godzilla from the movie and his face just totally contorts right before he uses the atomic breath or something. I don't know. Finally, we see concept art of Godzilla's head that looks very dragon-like. This has spikes on the front of his neck and warped dorsal plates. He also has a sharp dragon-like spike on his jaw as well. In my opinion, this looked very 98 inspired and also reminded me of a lot of the Godzilla concept art that was being developed for the 2014 film. He reminds me as well of some of the fan designs I've seen for Godzilla, which really could be the truth. Yamazaki might have cast a huge net when designing the new Godzilla and then reeled it in to find the Godzilla that he wanted. Maybe he was just looking for features to borrow to add on to his Godzilla the Ride design to make it the perfect Godzilla for him. And I'm not the only person who noticed this. Stupid Monster Freak theorized that they were trying to revive the 1980s Godzilla in all forms, taking inspiration, of course, from the Heisei Godzilla of the 80s and 90s, the Japanese Godzilla, but also the Hollywood version. You know, the Hollywood version from the 1980s, the one that we never saw. Stupid Monster Freak noticed that this design, this concept art, connects very well to the original William Stout unused Godzilla King of the Monsters 3D 1983 design. This was one of the US's attempts to make a Godzilla film. It kind of fell apart, but this was the design they cooked up, and I definitely see the influences, especially in the dorsal spines. That is incredible. I really think they might have used this as a reference for the new movie, which just shows Yamazaki and his team have such a deep love and passion for Godzilla that they really are willing to take inspiration from all sources all over the place. And finally, the last photo shows a design that closely resembles the one we have seen. This might have been the concept sketch they landed on before doing some fine tweaking to land on the refined design we see in front of us. Because this one is labeled as their Godzilla concept design, and it looks a lot like the one from the film. Alright, that's gonna do it for this one, guys. I'm not even sure if I was supposed to talk about a lot of this stuff. I really haven't heard anybody else cover this stuff, but I stumbled across a whole bunch of Japanese Twitter accounts talking about this stuff, and so I wanted to come on and talk about it because I thought it was awesome. What did you guys think about this stuff? Let me know down below. Are you hyped about the new Godzilla design, or are you still like, not for me? I know in the last video I teased that I was going to talk about some figure stuff in this video about Godzilla A and that stuff with the Banpresto thing we were talking about in the last video. I'm going to push it to the next video. Alright, I want to give a huge thank you to all my patrons on the Patreon for supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me and truthfully helps me in keeping making videos like this for you guys. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man, out.